So the so the as I'd mentioned, the topic I wanted to touch on tonight is referred to as the 8 worldly concerns, and it would perhaps sound perhaps that sounds a bit obscure. It's a traditional Buddhist topic, but it basically is a way of summarizing everything we care about and think about, almost everything we care about and think about, like the stuff that normally fills our mind. It's just kind of a way of categorizing that in a practical way. So it is, you are already extraordinarily familiar with the 8 worldly concerns, even if you can't name them yet. So the reason these are traditionally taught in the Buddhist context is in the context of meditating on death. And meditation on death is I know everybody thinks that breathing meditation is the first and most basic of the Buddhist meditations, but actually meditation on death is like the first official topic in a lot of Buddhist presentations. It is a subject that you can't really deny the existence of death as much as we would like to. It is a non-controversial subject in a sense. The idea of meditating on it, however, may feel extraordinarily controversial. I thought meditation was about feeling good. Meditation on death makes me feel very not good, nervous, sad, remembering people who died. Why don't we meditate on something cheerier? So tonight is not the cheery night. Actually, I'll probably guide to meditation on death at some point later, but I'm going to skirt around that topic for a moment and just talk about the 8 worldly concerns. When we have a brush with death, it immediately refocuses our priorities. This question I've been asking at the beginning of all of our meditations of what is important now. Of course, our mind can wander around to this or that. But if you have a brush with death, that immediately brings that question to the forefront of our mind. What is really important? And it dramatically reshifts our priorities. And people, of course, come to different conclusions about what really is important. But prior to having a brush with death, what tends to be most important for us and what tends to preoccupy us are these 8 worldly concerns. So to reduce the suspense, I'll list them now. They're in 4 pairs, and so it's maybe easier to remember. I'll use the simple way of describing them first, and then I'll give the formal wording for them. Pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame, good reputation and bad reputation. So pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame, good reputation and bad reputation. And so the 4 pairs you can formally understand as being pleased when experiencing pleasure, being displeased when not experiencing pleasure. And when I say it with this full sentence, there's a lot of subtlety in there. Being displeased when not experiencing pleasure. Not experiencing pleasure is a little bit different from pain. So it can be pain or a neutral feeling, like you just not having enough pleasure, but one way or another, being pleased or displeased. The next pair is being pleased when receiving resources and respect, or being displeased when not receiving resources and respect. And the next 2, they all sort of follow the similar pattern, being pleased when experiencing praise, being displeased when not experiencing praise, being pleased And the final one, being pleased when experiencing a good reputation, being displeased when not experiencing a good reputation. So you notice when I describe each of these four pairs, I always come back to this term pleased and displeased, which indicates that on some level, our mind always boils these concerns down to pleasure or pain. And from one level, these are all just feeling. Are you experiencing pleasure or pain, pleasure or displeasure? So if I criticize you, I'm not going to do it, don't worry. Or let's say I praise you. So I praise you. You all are looking amazing tonight. You feel good. And there's a feeling there. And if I talk about your reputation and I say, people really admire you, you feel good. There's a good feeling with that. And in a sense, we can boil everything down to a good feeling or a bad feeling, happiness and suffering. Even the most sophisticated endeavors, we're working to carry out an incredible business deal, and it requires a lot of technical competence and networking with all these people and, very refined discussions and so forth. And it all, no matter how sophisticated it seems to be, it all can boil down to, is it going well or not well? And I can ask you this simple question, how's it going? And you can give me a very simple answer. Oh, it's great. Oh, it's terrible, right? Because at the end of the day, we boil everything down into feeling. And feeling is, I've been pondering this a lot, and I've come to the conclusion that feeling is actually a calculation. It's a calculation that we're doing on an ongoing basis. So we're always kind of calculating. How's it going? And you don't feel like you're calculating because you're not calculating with your head. You're not doing math with your head. But our whole body is calculating. We're like, do I like it here? Do I like these people? Do these people like me? Do I fit in? Are things going in a good direction? Are they going in a bad direction? So our whole body is calculating. And so if you find yourself, imagine yourself with a group of people where you really feel accepted and loved and like you fit in. There's a feeling of relaxation, right? There's a feeling of comfort, and it is a felt experience. It's a visceral, it's a bodily experience. Imagine being with a group of people and you feel judged. Like somebody says something and you're thinking, were they talking about me? Were they criticizing me? There is a bodily feeling, a sort of a visceral prickling in our body. And it is that deeply that we feel these things. It's very visceral. So when we're meditating on our breath, and of course, because of my concern about my reputation, I'm hoping that my voice is enhancing the experience of this meditation. Of course, thank you. Praise, of craving praise, always. When we're doing breathing meditation, one of the interesting things we do is we sort of say, okay, close your eyes, shut out the visual distraction. We don't play nice music in our meditations. It's silent, right? Don't think about the auditory things. We don't light incense here, because of course it's digital. So there's no olfactory smell sense. I can't offer you any food again because we're digital. So we just begin to come down to this bodily sensation. How are you feeling? Feeling your breath in your body as it's moving. And our sense of touch is our most basic sense. Even amoeba have a sense of touch, right? Back when you were a single-celled organism before you had eyes, back when you were in your mom's womb, before you had eyes, before you had ears, before you had any of these things, there's a bodily tactile awareness before you could think or remember. It's our most basic sense. And even our sense of where we fit in socially, we still feel physically. We still feel that physically and viscerally. And that physical, visceral sense, whether you know it or not, it's still guiding. It still guides our behavior. Do I like these people? Do I not like these people? Is life going well? Is life not going well? Now, these 8 worldly concerns, I'm going to give you a fairly brief technical breakdown because I just figured it out fairly recently about how they represent some progression. How they represent a progression from the most basic experience of any being to a social experience, an experience of whether we fit in or don't fit in a group. Because I think that that's incredibly important for our understanding of our sense of self and self as an isolated individual versus self as part of a group, for example. These 8 worldly concerns, the first of them, pleasure and pain. Even amoeba experience pleasure and pain. It is our most basic sensation. We prick you with a needle, you don't like it. We brush you with a feather, hopefully you like it. Right? But pleasure and pain are very immediate. It all of a sudden goes from, and so for example, imagine you're living outdoors, literally no home, homeless. Like most of our ancestors for millions of years, we were all homeless humans, living in trees or under trees or in caves or whatever. Weather's great, you experience pleasure. Weather's bad, you experience pain. And your experiences fluctuate as dramatically as the weather does. And so our next concern is accumulating resources. So, for example, something like a place to live, a home, clothes, possessions, something we can trade for something else. This gives us a significantly greater degree of security. Imagining going up through sort of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, from immediate survival to some sense of security. We have resources. We can have a roof over our head. We have some degree of security. Imagine a homeless person who gets a tiny home or a placement in a shelter. They have a degree of security and stability that they didn't have before. But what was always interesting to me is that this second pair of worldly concerns is resources and respect. Resources and respect. So it's not just having things. It's also having respect. And I found it very curious. Why are those two paired together? Because they feel very different. And my conclusion was that they're paired together because having resources is not so much about having resources as it is about having respect and attention on us because of having those resources. Because there's a very basic sense for us as living beings that we all feel vulnerable. We all are vulnerable. And anyone who has resources is less vulnerable. And anyone who has resources is also seen by others to be less vulnerable. So there's some attention. And if you have resources, then that attention is a positive attention, because we naturally confuse people and their possessions. In fact, we naturally confuse ourselves and our possessions. In fact, we are indistinguishable from our possessions in the sense that we have come to possess a body. We've evolved from our history as being a single-celled organism to being, a baby, to having possessions, but we have accumulated. Our whole life journey has been a path of accumulation. And death, of course, is a path of divestment, if you want. It's like thorough divestment. So accumulating things is also beginning to accumulate attention or respect, or similarly losing things is also losing respect and losing others' attention. And whether that's accumulating, things that people can see, or a reputation like on social media, we're still trying to accumulate. And that speaks to how powerful this drive to be part of a group is. And so this third pair of worldly concerns is even more powerful: praise and blame. There's a Buddhist teacher, Shantideva. He says, both criticism and blame are like echoes in an empty cave. They are just words. They have no power to help or harm anyone. So why should we be so concerned about them? If I criticize you harshly and viciously in a foreign language that you don't understand, you will remain unaffected, right? Why? Because it's just noises. I can barely make any noises now. And so why should it matter to you, from across cyberspace, someone croaking out some noises in a language you can't even understand? Of course, it has no power whatsoever, except that it is a representation of how much respect or disrespect a person has. I want to stop saying you, right? Because it makes us all so nervous, right? What's he going to say? But when you praise someone, it is a representation of how much respect you have for them. Oh, they're amazing. If you criticize them, it's a representation of how much disrespect you have for them. Oh, they're terrible. And so it is basically taking that mental attitude and giving voice to it. But what happens when you give voice to something is that other people are influenced by that. And so praise and blame have a much more powerful influence on our social standing. You praise someone, other people hear you, and then they may come to develop respect. You blame someone, they may lose respect for that person. And so with our words, we can influence the respect that other people are held and how central they are to a social group. If you imagine a social group as a network, if you're at the very edges of that network, you can be knocked off very easily. If you're in the very center of that network, you're in a relatively more secure place. People have to knock off all the ones at the edges before they get to you. So we're always trying to get to the middle of the network, the center of that social network, because that's safety in numbers, right? It's not really safety in numbers. It's only safety in numbers if you're in the middle of those numbers. When you're on the periphery of those numbers, it's not that safe, right? So our mind, just on the deepest level, and really even on a cellular level, we are driven to be at the center of a group. Small group, large group, whatever, it varies. Which group, doesn't matter. If you don't fit in one group, what do you do? If people blame you and so forth, what do? Well, you blame them back. You tell a different story, you tell a different version of the story in which you're the hero and they're to be blamed. And then you find other people who also have been blamed and kicked out, and you make a faction and you split off and you create a different social group. And your social group is defined by blaming and hating the other social group that you used to be part of. But at least now you can be the very center of that group. And you can attract thousands, millions of followers, all of you haters. But of course, you don't call yourself the haters. You call yourself whatever, punks or rebels or the new group. And you become the new in group. And eventually, but it's the same dynamic. We always want to be in the middle. I'm not making fun of punks. But it is funny how this punk movement grew from being very like fringe chic folks to being able to buy Doc Martens in fancy shopping malls, right? It's like, and you have to dress a certain way to fit in to a punk society. I joke with one of my co-author, that if you show up to a punk concert wearing a nice suit, you just don't fit in. And he said, yeah, but that's actually the most punk thing you can do, right? Wear a suit to a punk concert. It's like, I don't care about social status. That's what you're saying. I'm strong, independent individual, not a conformist. And anyway, so praise and blame brings us to the fourth of these worldly concerns: reputation. Good reputation, bad reputation. This is the most stable aspect of social status. It's reputations about what people say about you behind your back. It's about it's what people think about you. It's like a shared collective belief about, oh, that person's great and they're amazing and people talk about you, or, oh, we are rejecting that person. And so in a sense, we're striving for reputation in social groups. And then, of course, conveniently now we have social reputation, like social media systems that will actually tell you what your reputation score is now. So because you were always wondering what your reputation score was. So these things, new systems arise and they sort of take new forms. But fundamentally, who cares if we're part of a social group or not? Well, again, it's down to the sense of identity. So who are you, right? Are you an isolated individual? No, not really. I mean, who are you? Are you, we're Americans, right? Or we're whatever we are. We all have an identity. And that identity is actually teaching us something. It's teaching us how identity is just a name. It's a concept. So the idea that someone would give their life for a cause, it is indicating that at some point, the group identity, will give your life for your family, or give your life for a good cause, whatever. It's indicating on some level that group identity can outlive the individual. And that's where, of course, death comes in. Our most basic and simple refuge in the face of death is to think about something like a family, or the people we've had impact on. But of course, death comes for those people too. So of course, then, what is a temporary refuge? Well, at least my children will outlive me, or at least this company will outlive me, or at least the social movement I initiated will outlive me, or whatever. It ends up, none of these things are particularly stable or long lasting, which that's kind of where Buddhism picks up. And it's like, well, okay, well, what are we really doing here? And how do we really think about ourselves? And what's actually happening is this play of mind and conception, and how can we have an identity that is actually stable, in that we really identify deeply with just being a living being. And maybe that's a comfortable place where we can end here, is just thinking we do already have group membership, no matter what people say about you. You're a member of Club All Living Beings. And nobody can kick you out of that club, no matter what they say about you. And as a member of Club All Living Beings, you experience the same thing that all living beings experience, which is pleasure and pain. And naturally also a wish for a good reputation and so forth. But within this status as a living being, even as basic as an amoeba, with just this physical feeling and so forth, at what point can we really feel peace? And at what point can we really feel contentment? And at what point can we say, I don't need to be chasing my reputation. I don't need to be worried about praise and blame. I don't need to be concerned about resources and respect. I don't even particularly need to be concerned about pleasure and pain. I can be at peace no matter what's happening, right? I can be at peace if things are going well, or if they're not going well. I can be at peace if I've got resources, if I've got gain or loss. I can be at peace if I'm praised or blamed. I can be at peace if I have a good reputation or a bad reputation. And I can be at peace because I've come to understand my mind better. And I've come to understand that all of these feelings, they come and they go. And I can weather them because my mind, because I'm a member of Club Living Being, that's what I get. You get a mind, and your mind is like space. And space is just like a container in which weather can come and go. And just like our ancient ancestors were subject to the vicissitude. I've never thought of that word in my life, but it came to me, so I'll use it. Suffering, subject to the vicissitudes of the weather. The crazy changing fortunes and so forth. But just like good weather and bad weather, it doesn't destroy space. It doesn't harm space. So similarly, we can find a state of peace that is able to accept pleasure, pain, good experiences, bad experiences, and so forth. And this at least, or at last, gives us a place of refuge. And that's our segue into meditation. So, okay. So why don't we take a bit of time with this long prelude now to focus on inner peace in this way. And again, as usual, find a comfortable position. We do allow ourselves to close our eyes, to ignore external surroundings. Bring our attention in just to our body, the feeling of sitting still. Take a deep breath in and out. Take another breath, just inviting ourselves to relax. And we take another breath, just asking ourselves what is important right now. And perhaps now, what is most important for us is peace. Some feeling of experiencing peace after a long day, a long year, a long life. We deserve peace. Everyone deserves peace. Imagine ourselves in a beautiful, uplifting environment. Imagine around us the people in our life, our parents, alive or dead, and the people we live and spend time with. But normally these people are tugging on our mind in this social network. Our mind is heavily influenced by these people. If we ask, why are we not more peaceful all the time? Perhaps it is this persistent concern for pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame, good reputation, bad reputation. We are always working on mentally on our social circle, how we fit in, how we're perceived, how secure is our standing, what people think of us. And our mind is buffeted like tempestuous weather. Our mind is buffeted, good, bad, nervous. We feel it in every cell of our body. Tension, discomfort, nervousness, or peace and relaxation and comfort. But always vulnerable to our changing experience, changing fortunes, and changing social status. But here in meditation, in the space of our own mind, in a realm, a domain that we alone control, we bring our social circle into a state of profound peace with us. We bring everyone in to meditation along with us so that they experience bliss, peace, stability, comfort, happiness. We are at the very center of our social network. And we imagine that network experiencing profound, profound peace. And as we begin to bring our meditation to a close, we reflect on how much power we have in the space of our own mind to reverse these social dynamics. And instead of being dragged away from peace by our 8 worldly concerns, we move in the opposite direction, bringing our entire social network into a state of peace through the power of our own peace, patience, and intention, and our love for these people. And we make a decision to carry that strength and power with us into our daily life. The only thing that stands between us and being a living, awakened being is the strength of our own mind, our peace and wisdom. And we can think, just as I am following this path, may everyone have the good fortune to follow the same path.